Ayana had walked many miles that morning, her small feet pressing into the dusty path that led from her village to the distant ranch. The sun had just begun to rise, spilling golden light across the rolling hills. Birds sang from the trees, but Ayana barely noticed their song. Her heart was heavy, filled with a mixture of hope and fear. She had no family to support her, no village suitor willing to take her hand in marriage, and she feared that she would remain alone forever. Every day in her village, whispers followed her. Some villagers pitied her, others quietly judged her. She had grown used to rejection, to being overlooked, to hearing that she would never find a husband. But today was different. Today, she decided to try one last time. The rancher, Samuel, lived several miles from her village. He was well known in the area, not just for the size of his ranch, but for his reputation as a fair and kind man. Samuel treated his workers and neighbors with respect, and many families in the region trusted him. Ayana had heard about him from an elder in her village. They said he had a good heart and might listen to someone who had nowhere else to turn. For the first time in years, Ayana felt a spark of hope. She adjusted the strap of her worn satchel, took a deep breath, and set off down the long dirt road that led to the ranch. The wind brushed against her face, carrying the scent of the fields and the distant river. She imagined the life she could have if Samuel agreed to help her, and the thought made her chest tighten with nervous anticipation. As she approached the ranch, the sound of livestock and the clatter of tools greeted her ears. Samuel's ranch was larger than she had imagined, stretching across wide acres of land. Fences lined the property, keeping cattle and horses contained, and the barn stood like a solid, welcoming house of wood in the center. Ayana paused for a moment, taking it all in. She was not used to seeing such a place, and it made her feel both small and determined. "I must do this," she whispered to herself. "I have no other choice." Finally, she reached the main house, a sturdy building with windows that reflected the morning sun. Samuel was there, tending to some papers on his porch. He looked up as she approached, surprised to see a young woman standing before him. She looked fragile at first glance, with her dark hair pulled back and her dress slightly worn. But her eyes shone with determination. There was something about the way she stood, almost defiant despite her fear, that caught his attention. I need your help," she said, her voice trembling slightly but carrying an urgent strength. "No one wants me. I need a husband. Please, give me one last chance." She lowered her gaze, unsure if she had spoken too boldly. But the words escaped anyway. Samuel blinked, unsure how to respond. It was not every day that a stranger came to his ranch asking for a husband. He had expected visitors, yes, but none like this. He studied her carefully, noticing the worry etched on her face, the way her hands clutched the strap of her bag, and the quiet dignity in the way she spoke. There was a raw honesty in her eyes, a vulnerability that was not weak but quietly strong. It stirred something inside him, a mixture of curiosity, compassion, and responsibility. "Sit," he said finally, gesturing to a wooden chair on the porch. "Tell me everything." Ayana moved to the chair, grateful for his calm response. She took a deep breath, letting the tension in her shoulders ease slightly, and began to speak. "My name is Ayana," she said, her voice steadier now. "I have lived all my life in a small village, but no one there wants me. I have tried to find someone who would accept me, who would marry me, but it has never worked. People say I am too different. I do not know what else to do. I cannot stay alone anymore. I need a chance to build a family, to have a home of my own. Please, I beg you to give me that chance." Samuel listened quietly, his hands folded in front of him. He could sense her pain, but also her courage. Many people in her situation might have been angry or resentful, but she had come with humility and hope. He nodded slowly. "You are brave to come here," he said, "and I can see how much you want this. But marriage is not something given lightly. It is built on trust, respect, and understanding. Before I can consider anything, I need to know you. I need to know what kind of person you are, and whether life on a ranch is something you could manage." Ayanna nodded eagerly. She had expected his caution and was prepared to prove herself. "I will do anything," she said. "I will work. I will learn. I will show you that I am worthy. Please. Just one chance." Samuel studied her for a moment longer, then smiled faintly. "Very well," he said. "You will stay here for a while. Work on the ranch. Help with the animals, the fences, and the chores. I will watch. And in time, I will know if you are suited for more than words can tell." Relief washed over Ayanna like a cool river. She bowed her head slightly, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will not disappoint you." From that moment, her life began to change. Samuel introduced her to the ranch workers and assigned her small tasks, at first feeding the chickens, gathering eggs, and cleaning the barn. Each task was new and challenging for her. She had never worked with animals so closely, and the physical labor made her muscles ache. But she refused to complain. Each morning, she rose before the sun, eager to prove herself. And each night, she went to bed exhausted but proud of what she had accomplished. As the days passed, Samuel observed her carefully. He saw her patience with the animals, her willingness to learn, and her quiet resilience. When a young calf refused to drink, Ayanna spent hours coaxing it gently, refusing to leave until it finally drank. When fences broke in the windstorm, she helped repair them tirelessly, showing determination that impressed even the most seasoned ranch hands. Slowly, Samuel began to see her not as a desperate stranger, but as a capable, strong, and kind person. In the evenings, after the chores were done, Ayanna and Samuel would sit together on the porch. Sometimes they spoke of the ranch, sometimes of their pasts, and sometimes of the dreams they held in their hearts. Ayanna told Samuel about her village, the struggles she had faced, and the moments when she had felt utterly alone. Samuel shared his own story, how he had taken over the ranch after his father, the hardships he had endured, and the responsibility he felt toward everyone who lived and worked there. The bond between them grew quietly but steadily. Samuel admired her courage, and Ayanna admired his fairness and patience. Both began to understand that life could be hard and lonely, but it could also be filled with kindness, respect, and connection. Ayanna realized that asking for help had been the first step, but proving her worth through action was what would truly matter. By the end of the first week, Samuel called her aside. "You have shown dedication," he said. "You are learning quickly, and you do not give up. That is more than I expected." Ayanna's heart lifted. For the first time, someone had recognized her effort and her character, not just her desperate plea. "I am grateful," she said simply, her voice full of emotion. "I will continue to do my best, no matter what it takes." And so, the first part of her journey came to a quiet close. Ayanna had taken the first step toward changing her life. She had faced her fear, spoken her truth, and been given a chance, not a promise, but an opportunity. And as she lay down to rest that night, listening to the sounds of the ranch and feeling the gentle sway of the wind, she dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change forever. The morning sun rose over the ranch, painting the wide fields with warm shades of gold and orange. Ayanna woke early, just as she had learned to do, the crisp air filling her lungs as she stepped outside. Today was not like the first day, when everything had felt overwhelming and strange. Today, she felt a growing sense of belonging. She knew the tasks that awaited her, feeding the animals, checking the fences, and helping in the barn, but now they seemed less intimidating. She had begun to understand the rhythm of ranch life, the way each task connected to the other, and how much care it took to maintain the land and the animals. Samuel was already outside, inspecting the herd of cattle. He noticed Ayanna approaching and gave her a small nod of greeting. She smiled, her nerves eased by the familiarity of the routine and the quiet reassurance in his eyes. Over the past week, she had proven herself to be hardworking and dependable, and Samuel had begun to see her as more than a stranger. There was something in her determination, a spark of resilience that reminded him of the values he had always admired in people who worked the land. "Good morning, Ayanna," Samuel said. "Today, we will start with the horses. They need to be fed and checked. Then we will go to the northern fence. A few boards are loose after the windstorm." Ayanna nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir," she replied. The words were simple, but they carried her dedication and willingness to learn. She followed Samuel to the stable, where the horses were already moving gently, their soft whinnies greeting her. She ran her hands along their sleek coats, feeling the warmth of their muscles beneath her fingers. She had never been this close to animals before, and a sense of awe and responsibility filled her. Every action mattered, the way she held the reins, the care with which she fed them, the attention she gave to noticing any signs of illness or discomfort. Samuel watched her quietly, impressed by her careful approach. "You have a good touch with them," he said. "Not everyone can handle horses like you do. They sense your respect." Ayanna felt a blush rise to her cheeks, grateful for the compliment. She had feared failure, but each small success boosted her confidence. After the morning chores, they walked toward the northern fence. The wind had loosened some boards during the last storm, and a small section was at risk of collapsing. Ayanna picked up a hammer and nails, following Samuel's instructions carefully. Her hands were rough from the work, but she welcomed the physical effort. The sun beat down on them, and the smell of fresh earth mixed with hay filled the air. They worked side by side in silence, a comfortable silence that spoke of growing trust and understanding. "Tell me about your village," Samuel asked suddenly, breaking the quiet. "I want to understand where you come from, your life before the ranch." Ayanna paused, thinking about how much to share. "It is a small place," she said finally. "Not many people there have enough to live well. Families are close, but sometimes life is hard. I always tried to help where I could, but people did not see my efforts. They only saw that I was alone. I was never chosen for marriage, and they said it was because I was too different. I do not know why. Perhaps it is my way of speaking, or the way I think, but I always hoped someone would see me for who I am, not for what others think." Samuel nodded, listening carefully. "I understand," he said gently. "It is not easy to be misunderstood. But you are strong, and that strength shows. You did not give up, even when it was difficult. That is rare and admirable." Ayanna felt a warmth in her chest. For so long, she had been judged, dismissed, and ignored. Here, someone saw her efforts, her strength, and her heart. The acknowledgement gave her courage, and she smiled at him shyly. The days passed, and Ayanna continued learning. She learned to groom the horses, mend broken fences, carry hay, and even assist with milking the cows. Each task challenged her in new ways, teaching patience, precision, and responsibility. Samuel occasionally tested her knowledge, giving her small tasks without instruction to see if she had learned well. Every time she succeeded, a quiet pride blossomed inside her. But life on the ranch was not only about work. Samuel also introduced her to the rhythm of ranch living, the simple joys that made the hard work worthwhile. They walked along the river that bordered the property, watching the reflection of trees and sky ripple on the water's surface. They shared meals made from fresh vegetables, milk, and eggs. Sometimes they laughed over small accidents in the barn, like a playful horse knocking over a bucket or a stubborn goat refusing to move. In these moments, Ayanna began to see Samuel as more than a mentor or a rancher. He was a kind, patient, and thoughtful person who respected her efforts and shared his knowledge without condescension. One afternoon, a sudden rainstorm swept across the ranch. The wind howled through the trees, and rain soaked the fields. Samuel called Ayanna inside the barn, and they watched the storm together from the safety of the wooden shelter. She had never felt anything like it. The wind, the rain, the sound of nature's raw power. Samuel handed her a blanket and said, "Sometimes, Life is like this storm. It can feel overwhelming, but we survive it by staying calm and working together." Ayana nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. She realized that she was learning not only about ranch life, but about resilience, trust, and partnership. The lessons were as much about life as they were about work. She began to feel that maybe she could belong somewhere, that maybe she could build a life where her efforts and heart mattered. Over the following weeks, the bond between Samuel and Ayana grew stronger. Samuel noticed her gentle nature and her dedication to the animals. He saw the way she treated the workers with respect and kindness, never demanding attention but earning it through action. Ayana, in turn, admired his fairness and quiet strength. She saw a man who worked tirelessly to care for the ranch, who valued honesty and effort above all else, and who had a heart big enough to recognize her worth despite her past struggles. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and purple, Samuel and Ayana sat on the porch, tired from a long day of work. The air was cool, and the smell of the earth after rain filled the atmosphere. Ayana spoke softly. "I never thought I could feel at home somewhere, but here, I feel like I belong. Even if I do not know the future, I am grateful for this chance." Samuel smiled, a rare warmth in his expression. "You have earned your place here," he said, "not because of words or pleas, but because of who you are and what you do. That is more important than anything else." Ayana felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. For the first time, someone had truly seen her, her strengths, her struggles, and her heart. She felt a connection, not just to Samuel, but to the land, the animals, and the life she was building with patience and effort. As night fell, the ranch was quiet, except for the distant calls of owls and the rustle of the wind in the trees. Ayana lay in her small room, exhausted but content. Reflecting on the day, she had learned more than chores and routines. She had learned trust, patience, and the value of perseverance. She had discovered that life could change when one took a chance, and she dared to hope that maybe her journey had only just begun. The following morning, she rose before dawn again, determined to continue learning and proving herself. Samuel greeted her with a nod, silently acknowledging the effort and growth he had seen in her. Ayana smiled, feeling a quiet pride. She knew that every day would bring new challenges, but she also knew that she was capable of facing them. Each day on the ranch strengthened her body, mind, and spirit, and she began to feel a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. The bond between Ayana and Samuel continued to grow, built on respect, understanding, and shared effort. They were learning from each other, teaching each other patience, kindness, and resilience. And as Ayana worked through each task, she began to dream of a future she had never dared, to imagine a future where she had a home, a partner, and a life filled with hope and possibility. By the end of the second part of her journey, Ayana had not only learned the practical skills of ranch life but had also begun to understand what it meant to belong, to be valued, and to connect with another person through trust and shared experience. She was no longer just the desperate woman who had arrived at Samuel's porch. She was growing into someone strong, capable, and full of hope, a woman ready for whatever the future might hold. Spring was in full bloom at the ranch. The fields were lush with green grass, wildflowers danced in the gentle breeze, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of blossoms. Life seemed calm and peaceful. Yet Ayana knew that ranch life could be unpredictable. She had learned this over the past weeks. Storms could appear suddenly, animals could fall ill, and fences could break without warning. But she also knew that challenges were part of life, and that facing them could make her stronger. One morning, Samuel called Ayana to the barn with a serious expression. "Ayana," he said, "we have a problem. One of the fences on the northern field is broken again, and a few cattle have wandered off. We need to act quickly, or they could get lost or hurt." Ayana's heart beat faster. She had helped with fences before, but this time the task felt heavier, more urgent. "I'll help," she said immediately, determination in her voice. Samuel nodded, and together they rushed to the northern field. When they arrived, Ayanna saw the damage. The windstorm from the previous night had loosened several boards, and 2 cows had already wandered into a nearby forested area. Ayanna felt a pang of worry for the animals, but she quickly focused on what needed to be done. "We need to split up," Samuel said. "I'll go after the cows. You start fixing the fence, and we'll meet back here in an hour." Ayanna grabbed her tools and worked quickly, hammering boards into place and securing the posts with all her strength. Her hands ached, and sweat dripped down her face. But she didn't stop. She knew that the animals' safety depended on her effort. At the same time, her mind kept thinking about Samuel chasing the cows through the thick forest. She hoped he would be safe, and that they could save all the animals. After an hour of hard work, Samuel returned, leading the cows back through the trees. He smiled at her, noticing her flushed face and tired arms. "You did well," he said. "You handled this better than I expected." Ayanna felt a surge of pride. She had faced a difficult situation and succeeded, but she also realized that challenges on the ranch were not always easy, and there would be more tests ahead. Over the next few days, Ayanna and Samuel continued to face small and large challenges together. A horse got a cut on its leg, requiring careful cleaning and bandaging. A heavy rainstorm flooded part of the barn, forcing them to move hay and animals to safer areas. Ayanna learned quickly how to assess problems, stay calm, and act responsibly. She also noticed how Samuel remained patient and composed, guiding her with encouragement rather than criticism. But life on the ranch was not just about work. It was also about trust and understanding. One afternoon, as they rested by the river after a long day, Samuel spoke quietly. "Ayanna, I see how hard you work and how much you care. That is rare. Many people give up when things get tough, but you face every challenge. I respect that." Ayanna felt her heart lift. She had spent so much of her life feeling unwanted, judged, and unappreciated. Here, someone truly noticed her efforts and her character. "Thank you," she said softly. "I never want to give up. I want to prove that I can be useful, that I can belong somewhere." Samuel nodded. "You are proving it every day. But remember, belonging is not just about work. It is also about honesty, respect, and patience. You are learning all of these." Despite these encouraging words, not everything was easy. Ayanna sometimes doubted herself. She worried that no matter how hard she worked, she might never be truly accepted. She remembered the whispers from her village, the cold shoulders, and the rejection she had faced. Those memories surfaced during quiet moments, making her heart ache. Yet, every time she faltered, she found strength in Samuel's guidance and the small successes on the ranch. She began to understand that life's difficulties did not define her. Her response to them did. One evening, a small accident tested their bond. A young calf had wandered into a low-lying area near the river, and the ground was slippery from recent rain. Samuel rushed to pull it out, but the calf panicked and slipped, falling into the shallow water. Ayanna ran to help, grabbing a rope and holding it steady while Samuel guided the calf to safety. The animal shivered and struggled, but together, they managed to calm it and lead it back to the barn. As they dried off by the fire later, Samuel looked at Ayanna with admiration. "You were brave today," he said. "You didn't hesitate, even when it was dangerous. That courage is important not just for the ranch, but for life." Ayanna blushed, feeling both proud and humble. "I just wanted to help," she said. "I could not let it get hurt." Samuel smiled. "And that is why you are different. You care deeply, and that makes a difference in everything you do." The incident with the calf marked a turning point. Ayanna realized that she was no longer just a helper on the ranch. She was becoming an essential part of its life. Her confidence grew, and she began to trust her own judgment more. Samuel, too, began to see her as more than a guest or temporary worker. He saw a partner, someone capable, reliable, and kind-hearted. But life was still not free of worry. One night, a sudden windstorm hit the ranch, stronger than any they had faced before. The barn shook, the fences groaned, and the trees swayed dangerously. Ayanna and Samuel worked side by side to secure the animals, moving them to safer areas and checking the fences repeatedly. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the wind and their coordinated efforts. When the storm finally subsided, they were exhausted, but relieved. Samuel looked at Ayanna, noticing her dirt-streaked face and tired hands. "You did well," he said. "I am glad you were here with me. Your courage and quick thinking made a difference." Ayanna felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced her fears, worked hard, and proven herself in a way she had never imagined possible. She realized that challenges, no matter how frightening, were opportunities to grow, to show strength, and to build trust. Over the following weeks, their partnership strengthened. Samuel taught Ayanna more advanced skills: how to read the weather, recognize signs of illness in animals, and repair equipment. Ayanna listened carefully, eager to learn and improve. She also began to share her own ideas, suggesting better ways to organize the barn and care for the animals. Samuel valued her input, recognizing her intelligence and thoughtful approach. Through these shared experiences, a quiet friendship blossomed. They laughed together at small mishaps, like a mischievous goat stealing hay or a clumsy horse knocking over a bucket. They shared stories of their childhoods and dreams, learning more about each other's lives and values. Samuel admired her resilience and honesty, while Ayanna respected his wisdom and fairness. Yet, amid all the progress, Ayanna could not ignore the lingering fear in her heart, the fear of rejection. She worried that Samuel might see her as only a temporary presence on the ranch, that all her hard work and courage might not be enough to earn a permanent place in his life. She kept these thoughts private, channeling her energy into the daily tasks and the bond she was building. One evening, as the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Samuel and Ayanna sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The air was warm, the breeze gentle, and the world seemed calm. Samuel spoke quietly. "Ayanna, I see how far you have come. You have faced challenges, worked hard, and proven yourself. That is more than most people could do." Ayanna looked at him, her heart pounding. "I just want to belong somewhere, to be valued, to have a life that matters," she said softly. Samuel nodded, understanding in his eyes. "And you do. You belong here, because you have shown who you are, not just through words, but through your actions. That is what truly matters." For the first time in her life, Ayanna felt a deep sense of relief and hope. She had faced challenges, proved her strength, and earned trust. She realized that life's obstacles were not barriers, but opportunities to grow and show courage. And as she sat beside Samuel, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she felt a quiet certainty that her journey was leading her to something meaningful and lasting. The third part of her journey ended not with a dramatic event, but with quiet understanding. Ayanna had faced difficulties, learned resilience, and begun to build a connection with Samuel that was founded on respect, trust, and shared experience. She had discovered that challenges, no matter how daunting, could be overcome with determination, courage, and partnership. And in that discovery, she found not just hope, but a sense of belonging she had never known before. Spring had fully transformed the ranch into a place of vibrant life. Green pastures stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with colorful wildflowers, and the river that wound along the property sparkled under the sun. Ayanna had grown stronger over the past months. She moved with confidence among the animals, handled tools with skill, and carried out her chores with a dedication that impressed even the most experienced ranch hands. But what mattered most to her was not just the work, it was the connection she had begun to feel with Samuel. A bond that had grown quietly through shared challenges, mutual respect, and understanding. One warm morning, Samuel called Ayanna to help with the orchard. The trees were heavy with fruit, and the branches needed careful pruning to ensure a healthy harvest. As they worked side by side, she marveled at the way he guided her, explaining the best techniques with patience, never rushing, never criticizing. Samuel noticed the care in her hands and the thoughtfulness in her approach. "You are learning quickly," he said, "and your care for everything you touch shows. That is rare." Ayana felt a smile tug at her lips. She had always longed to be valued, to be seen for who she truly was. Here, on this ranch, her efforts were recognized, and it gave her a sense of purpose she had never experienced in her village. "Thank you," she said softly. "I want to do my best. For the animals, the ranch, and for this place that feels like home." Samuel glanced at her, his gaze lingering a moment longer than usual. "You have made this place better just by being here," he said quietly. There was a warmth in his voice, a sincerity that made Ayana's heart beat faster. She looked down, embarrassed, unsure how to respond to his words. But the feeling of being appreciated, truly and deeply, stayed with her. Over the following days, their routine continued. But something subtle was changing between them. Conversations grew longer and more personal. Samuel shared stories of his childhood, the challenges he faced taking over the ranch, and the dreams he had nurtured for years. Ayana, in turn, spoke of her past, the loneliness she had endured, the small joys she had cherished, and the fear she had felt of never being wanted. Samuel listened intently, never interrupting, always showing a genuine interest in her thoughts and feelings. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Samuel and Ayana sat together by the riverbank. The water reflected the colors of the sunset, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers. They had spent the day tending to the fields, and now their bodies were tired, but their spirits felt lighter. "I have never had anyone like you on this ranch," Samuel said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. "You care, you work hard, and you think beyond yourself. It is rare to find someone with that kind of heart." Ayana felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had longed for acceptance, for someone to see her for who she truly was, and now it seemed that Samuel had done just that. I never expected to find this," she admitted softly. "I thought my life would always be empty. But here, I feel like I belong, like I am not invisible anymore." Samuel looked at her thoughtfully. "You do belong, Ayana. You have proven that not through words, but through your actions, your courage, and your honesty. That is why I respect you." For the first time in her life, Ayana felt a sense of peace and security. The fear of rejection that had haunted her for so long was slowly fading. She realized that life could offer second chances, and that by showing her true self and working with dedication, she had found a place where she mattered. As the days turned into weeks, their bond continued to deepen. They shared small moments that seemed ordinary, but were filled with meaning. Ayana would bring fresh bread or fruit to Samuel while he worked, and he would offer gentle guidance or share a story from his past. They laughed together at small mishaps, like when a mischievous goat stole a bucket of feed, or when a young horse refused to follow instructions. Through these shared experiences, they learned to trust each other, not only with tasks but also with their thoughts, fears, and hopes. One afternoon, Ayana faced a personal challenge that tested her courage in a new way. She was tasked with handling a young stallion that had a reputation for being difficult. Many workers avoided it, fearing it would throw them off or behave unpredictably. Ayana felt a flicker of fear, but she remembered Samuel's words about courage, patience, and trust. She approached the stallion slowly, speaking softly, letting it sense her calm and respect. Step by step, she guided it through training exercises, gaining its trust and cooperation. Samuel watched silently, impressed by her poise and determination. "You handled that well," he said afterward. "Most people would have given up or rushed it. You were patient, and the horse responded to your calmness. That is a skill, and it shows strength of character." Ayana felt her chest swell with pride. Not only had she accomplished the task, but she had also learned something about herself. Her ability to face fear and persevere even when the challenge seemed daunting. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear but the decision to act despite it. Their connection grew stronger, not only through shared work, but also through moments of quiet reflection. One evening, after a long day in the fields, they sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky. Samuel spoke gently. "Ayanna, I see your heart, your spirit, and your dedication. I have watched you grow, not just in skill, but in strength and confidence. That growth, it has inspired me." Ayanna felt a rush of emotion. She had longed for someone to recognize her for who she was, not just what she could do. Samuel's words made her feel seen, valued, and respected in a way she had never experienced. She smiled, shy but happy, feeling a bond that was deeper than mere friendship. As spring turned into early summer, the ranch seemed to reflect the changes in their relationship. The fields were vibrant, the animals healthy, and the work ran smoothly because they had learned to rely on each other. Ayanna no longer felt like an outsider. She felt like a part of the land, the ranch, and Samuel's life. Their partnership had grown into mutual respect and quiet affection, built on shared experiences and trust. Yet, Ayanna also understood that life was still unpredictable. She could not assume that everything would always be easy, but she now had faith in her own strength and in the connection she had formed with Samuel. She realized that true belonging required effort, honesty, and courage not only in facing external challenges but also in facing one's own fears and insecurities. One evening, Samuel invited her to walk along the riverbank. The sky was painted in twilight colors, and the water reflected the soft glow. "Ayanna," he said, his voice gentle, "you have come a long way since the day you first arrived here. You have faced challenges, worked hard, and shown a heart full of courage. I want you to know that you are valued, not only for what you do, but for who you are." Ayanna felt tears prick at her eyes. For so long, she had feared rejection and loneliness. Now, she was being told that she mattered, that she was respected and appreciated. "Thank you," she whispered. "I never thought I could feel like this. Like I belong somewhere. Like someone truly sees me." Samuel smiled, a quiet warmth in his expression. "You do belong, Ayanna. And you always will, as long as you remain true to yourself and your heart." That night, as Ayanna lay in her small room, she reflected on the journey she had taken. From the moment she had walked onto the ranch, pleading for a chance, to now, she had grown stronger, more confident, and more hopeful. She had learned about hard work, resilience, and trust. She had faced challenges and fears, and had proven to herself, and to Samuel, that she was capable, brave, and worthy of belonging. The turning point was not a single event, but the culmination of small acts of courage, moments of patience, and the steady building of trust. Ayanna realized that the bond she shared with Samuel was growing into something deeper than friendship. It was based on mutual respect, shared experiences, and understanding. She felt a sense of hope and certainty for the first time in her life. Spring's beauty mirrored the growth in their relationship. Just as the land had blossomed, so had the connection between Ayanna and Samuel. And as she drifted into sleep that night, she allowed herself to dream not of rejection or loneliness, but of a future filled with belonging, partnership, and hope. Summer had fully arrived at the ranch, bringing warmth to the fields, brightness to the river, and a sense of vitality to every corner of the property. The animals thrived under careful care, the crops flourished, and the buildings stood strong after months of work. But more importantly, the ranch had become a place of comfort, safety, and belonging not just for the land and the animals, but for Ayanna. She had grown into her role on the ranch completely. Her hands were calloused from months of hard work, her muscles strong, and her mind sharp. But more than her skill and endurance, it was her heart that had transformed. She had faced rejection, loneliness, and fear. Yet she had shown patience, courage, and determination. Every day, She had proven herself not only to Samuel, but to herself. Samuel, too, had changed. From the first day when Ayanna had timidly approached his porch, pleading for a chance, he had watched her grow into a confident, capable, and kind-hearted woman. He admired her strength, her patience, and the gentle way she cared for the animals and the people around her. He realized that she was no longer just someone he had allowed to work on his ranch. She was becoming an essential part of the ranch and of his life. One warm afternoon, as the sun began to dip low in the sky, Samuel called Ayanna to the porch. She looked up from her work, wiping her hands on a cloth, and saw the seriousness in his expression. Her heart skipped a beat, unsure what to expect. "Ayanna," he said softly, "I have watched you work, learn, and grow over these past months. You have faced challenges that would have overwhelmed most people, yet you never gave up. You have shown courage, kindness, and patience. That is why I want to speak to you about something important." Ayanna felt a flutter of emotion. She had always hoped for acceptance, for someone to see her worth. But now she sensed that Samuel's words might offer more than just recognition. She nodded silently, listening carefully as he continued. "I have come to admire you, not just for your work, but for your heart and your spirit," he said. "You have become a part of this ranch, of the life I live, and I cannot imagine my days without your presence. I want to offer you something you asked for the first day you came here, not because you begged, but because you have earned it. I want to ask you to be my wife." Ayanna's eyes widened, and a wave of emotion swept through her. She had dreamed of acceptance and belonging, but now the dream was unfolding before her. She could hardly find words. Tears welled in her eyes, but they were tears of joy and relief, not sadness. She had feared loneliness for so long, and now she was being offered a future filled with love, respect, and partnership. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with happiness. "Yes, I will." Samuel smiled, and for a moment, they simply held hands, letting the weight of months of effort, courage, and trust settle between them. It was not a hurried decision or a fleeting moment of emotion. It was the result of a shared journey, built on respect, understanding, and care. Ayanna had proven herself through action, and Samuel had come to know her heart. Together, they had created something real and lasting. In the days that followed, preparations began quietly. The ranch workers and close friends were invited to witness the union of two people who had grown to trust and admire each other deeply. The ceremony was simple, yet heartfelt. Ayanna wore a dress she had chosen herself, modest but elegant, reflecting her spirit strong, gentle, and dignified. Samuel stood beside her, proud and calm, as he spoke words that reflected their journey and the bond they had built. The ceremony was held in a meadow near the river, surrounded by the animals and the land that had become central to their lives. The sun shone warmly. The breeze carried the scent of wildflowers, and the sound of water flowing nearby added a peaceful rhythm. As they exchanged vows, Ayanna felt a sense of completeness she had never known. She was no longer the woman who had pleaded for a chance. She was now a partner, equal in respect, trust, and affection. Samuel had not offered her life out of pity or obligation, he had offered it out of admiration and love. After the ceremony, the ranch workers cheered and shared in their happiness. The village had slowly come to accept their union as well, seeing that the relationship was built on genuine respect and care. People who had once whispered about Ayanna now acknowledged her courage, her patience, and the positive changes she had brought to the ranch. It was a victory not just of love, but of perseverance, dignity, and integrity. In the days following the wedding, life on the ranch settled into a new rhythm. Ayanna continued her work, but now, with an added sense of belonging and purpose. She and Samuel planned together, shared decisions about the ranch, and supported each other in both work and life. Their partnership was built on mutual respect, each valuing the other's opinions, efforts, and heart. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned golden, Samuel and Ayanna sat on the porch, holding hands and watching the animals graze in the fading light. Ayanna spoke softly. "I never thought I could feel this. Happy, accepted, and at peace. I feared I would always be alone, but now I see that life can change when someone gives you a chance, and when you work hard and never give up." Samuel nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "You gave yourself that chance," he said. "I only provided the opportunity. You have proven your courage, your strength, and your heart. That is why this works. You are who you are, and that is more than enough." Ayanna smiled, feeling a warmth and certainty she had never experienced before. She realized that life's hardships had prepared her for this moment, teaching her patience, courage, and the value of persistence. The love and acceptance she now enjoyed were not just gifts, they were earned through resilience and effort. As months passed, the ranch thrived under their shared guidance. The animals were healthy, the fields productive, and the buildings well-maintained. But the greatest achievement was the life they had built together, a life of trust, mutual respect, and quiet affection. Ayanna's confidence grew daily, and she became a source of inspiration for others who faced challenges or feared rejection. Her story became one of hope, showing that even in the face of hardship, courage, perseverance, and sincerity could lead to a meaningful and fulfilling life. Ayanna often thought back to the day she had first approached Samuel's porch, desperate for a chance and unsure if anyone would ever care for her. She remembered the fear in her heart, the uncertainty in her voice, and the vulnerability she had shown. And now, as she looked around at the ranch, at Samuel by her side, and at the life they had built together, she felt a deep gratitude. She had been brave enough to ask for a chance, and she had been patient, hardworking, and kind enough to prove herself worthy. Samuel and Ayanna continued to nurture their bond, celebrating small victories, supporting each other through challenges, and cherishing quiet moments of connection. Their relationship was steady, built on shared effort, understanding, and mutual respect. They laughed together, worked together, and planned for the future together, knowing that their journey had brought them to a place of trust and love that few ever find. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, Ayanna looked at Samuel with a sense of calm and certainty. "Thank you," she said softly, "for seeing me, for believing in me." Samuel smiled, his eyes filled with warmth and affection. "No, Ayanna," he replied gently. "Thank you for showing me what true courage, patience, and heart look like. You have made this ranch, and my life, better in ways I cannot describe." And in that moment, surrounded by the land, the animals, and the life they had built together, Ayanna felt a sense of completion. She had found not just a husband, but a partner, a friend, and a home. The journey had not been easy, but it had been worth every step, every challenge, and every moment of doubt. She had dared to hope, worked hard, and embraced her true self, and in doing so, she had found happiness, love, and belonging. The story of Ayanna and Samuel became one of quiet inspiration. Their journey showed that even those who feel unwanted or rejected can find love, acceptance, and a meaningful life when they are courageous, persistent, and genuine. And as the sun set over the ranch, bathing the fields and river in golden light, Ayanna knew that she had finally found a place where she truly belonged. A life filled with hope, partnership, and lasting happiness.